So, David, on to the talking point for this week, and it does come in the form of the pig, sweaty pig himself. And I guess the question is, what do we do?
Yeah.
So, owners, I feel like the answer is pretty obvious. You're probably gonna have to hold him at this stage. You've kind of, it's a sunk cost now. You got to just keep holding him.
Yeah.
But for non-owners, people who either traded him out or haven't owned him at all, should we be bypassing him, or should we be looking to get him in still? Obviously, knowing now that he's going to miss this week as well.
Yeah. I must admit, I thought the talking point this week would have been whether or not Ben Keys actually shut his DAX on the weekend. If for those of you who saw the game or the photos online, we'll pop it up on the on YouTube here on this episode now. But it did look pretty suspect. I must admit though, just with regards to that, because it was a funny moment. Rory Laird was on radio in South Australia, and he actually had to go on and clear up the fact that no, he didn't shit his DAX. He apparently fell on the precipice or something that he said, like on the edge of the field. But if he was going to do that, it looked like would have been riding the boundary line in order for that to happen. Like,
yeah,
pretty sus, mate. Pretty sus. Anyway, I think he shut his DAX. But let's move on to this actual talking point here with Clarry. And yeah, it's been pretty obvious. Like I've said, and I think you've mentioned it as well, that we were both keen to get him back into our sides after trading him out. But I think at this point in time, I'm probably going to redirect my funds elsewhere because I had to, unfortunately trade out Sicily as well. And at this point, it's kind of like weighing up: do I go for Sicily? Do I go for Clarry? Because I don't have the cash to get both in, because they're both at very similar price points. And I think now I'm going to bypass Clarry, just because if he does return, first and foremost, if he was to return, say next week, for example, he's got a high break even. Again, there's that suspect about his hammy. Now, the medicos, again, this is part of the issue. They haven't come out and confirmed that he's redone his hammy, but there is speculation. There's an article on Code Sports that mentions that, he may have done his hammy. They're kind of alluding to that. Again, just because purely they had follow-up scans and they said that, he wasn't ready to return, which is so, ambiguous about things and not clear cut. So, of course, you're going to read between the lines there. So I think even if he does return, is there a chance that he redoes the hammy again? That's the other worry. And I think with limited trades, at this point of the season, it's just too big of a risk to invest that sort of money, despite the fact he's an absolute gun and he's probably the number one player in SuperCoach at his peak. I think he's just too much of a risk. He might be a pod. Yes, that's probably an upside if people are trading him, apart from those people that have held him to date and want to hold him. But I think for those people that don't have him, I'd be looking elsewhere, and that's probably what I'm going to do. Unfortunately, as much as I wanted to really taste the pig juice yet again, I don't think it'll happen. I think we'll have to wait until next season. I don't know. Anything different for you, Liam?
No, but I'm trying to think about this from like a logical perspective, and like trying to actually do the math. So I'm looking at it. I'm saying I've still got Ashcroft in my side. He's averaging 79. Now, it depends on how long Clarry is actually out for. So if we don't have any actual realistic timeline,
makes it hard.
That's the issue. So I think from that perspective, I'm kind of like, you probably need to bypass him because you're losing out on points. So if I would go Libba this week, Libba's averaging 118. Ashcroft is averaging 79. That's a gain this week of 39 points. Now, Oliver, on the other hand, is averaging 125, which is obviously, 7 points more than Libba a week if we go on average. I've also rounded these up because obviously they're not scoring 117.7 points. But yeah. So from that perspective, it kind of makes sense to wait for Oliver if I know that he's only waiting, if it's only a week, because, I'll make up the 39 points over the season, theoretically.
Yeah, when you get him in.
If we look at the mean across the year. Problem is, if Oliver misses this week and then he misses next week, it's then,
There's less weeks for him to make
78
up the difference.
points. And then if he misses the week after, because we don't know,
Yeah.
like I think that's the key. If we can get, and we can't even trust what's coming out from them now. Like Simon Goodwin said after, was it the Carlton game? Like he's got 10 days. He'll definitely play, I think was his quote. And he hasn't played since King's birthday. Like, sorry, he didn't play. He hasn't played since then. Like it's been multiple weeks since then. Like,
it's a good point as well.
It really comes down to that, I think, at this stage.
Yeah. And if you're waiting for because I was hoping to bring him in last week. He was in I wrote out as you would have seen, for those people that tuned into my team talk videos. If you're listening to the podcast, check out our YouTube and you'll see that where I go into greater detail about my own team. But I wrote out a plan, pre-buys across, detailing the trades that I was looking to do across the 4 bye weeks. And Clarry was like the cherry on top of like my team. He was going to finish off my side. Obviously didn't account for Sicily being suspended, but I would have had him, brought in Clarry, finished my side, had 3 trades remaining. And as it's turned out, it scuttled my plans. And, again, I had to bypass him on the weekend, obviously, because he didn't play. I brought in Petrarca. There's a little bit of a silver lining there because Petrarca, I think, is benefiting in terms of his scores without Clarry being there. So I capitalized on that, brought him in. But again, I'm in a fortunate position because Briggs is kind of my ticket, or was my ticket to Clarry. And he's still got another 60K to make over the next couple of weeks, potentially. But if the opposite was true with Briggs, if he was about to lose cash and I had to wait on Clarry returning without knowing a definitive timeline, it's too much of a risk. Like you might as well just bypass him. There's no use waiting. If you are in that situation where you're going to use a player as a bit of your, a bit of a ticket to Clarry, but their break even's high and they're on the cusp of potentially dropping in price, that's just not worth it. It's not worth waiting for. And again, there's risk if he does return. We don't know how fit he's going to be. Even though he's been training sparingly,
it's a hamstring.
It's a hamstring and it's going to be risky. Yeah. Soft tissue injuries are renowned for potential recurrence. It's later in the season as well. It's not as if it's at the start of the season. So you got to sort of weigh all these things up alongside each other. I think to me, with limited trades, I think it's just too much of a risk. And I'd much prefer to bring in someone like a Sicily who isn't injured, is suspended, and we know will return 100% in round 18. Unless he tackles someone off field and gets suspended again. Yeah, for me, I think that's part of the reason why I'm looking to bypass Clarry. I've now like set my heart on that. I think last week I was 50-50. But now I think I'm kind of leaning more towards that.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. And I think that's where I'm going as well. Like if we look at him versus Sicily's going to come back in the side. It's not an issue of fitness with Sicily. He's going to come back in and kill it theoretically, or there's no concern. Whereas with Oliver, there's always going to be concern. You could see a Mills style thing where he gets subbed out.
Yep. Managed in game,
managed. Like it could be anything. So, and that's going to limit his scoring. It's not worth it.
Yeah.
And I think with the weeks, like there's 16, 7. There's
8 weeks to go.
9 weeks, 8 weeks. 8 weeks. Yeah, 8 weeks. Left. And he's not playing this week, so he's only 7 games after for him to potentially come back for.
Yeah.
That's the other thing you'd have to consider. It's a tough one. Could become a bit of a pod, based off that, but yeah, I think you've also got to bank on the points that you could get currently, and hopefully make it up before he comes back.
Yep. Yeah, it's just unfortunate for those people that own him because I'd almost be so you'd hate to do it, like trade him out. Yeah, but it's a rage trade at this point now where again if there's no clarity. If I was an owner, I think the fact that there's been no clarity, no timeline still, I would be trading him out. But I think there's merit in holding still because you've held him this far. You've lost out 5-6 weeks now, like on potential scoring. It's just, and it's kind of at the point now where you held him. He's been out across the bye, so that's kind of negated most of those lost points where it's best 18. even though he still definitely lost points because he's a primo. But now it's like best 22, and like everyone's at the stage now where they're starting to finish off their teams, and you're going to be kind of left behind in a sense, holding out hope that he's going to return. And you're going to have to field potentially a rookie, or hold out hope for someone like a MJ to have a, a breakout game again, or a, Seamus Mitchell, which again, how much faith can you put in those guys if you're swinging DPP and all that sort of stuff? But yeah, it's unfortunate, but I think it is what it is. But yeah, that's pretty much it for a discussion point on all things Clarry. Might revisit this maybe next week and touch on whether or not there's a timeline that's a bit more tangible.
Be interesting to also look back at it on the end of the season.
Yeah.
And kind of, I know hindsight's 2020, but just to see, just to see how it went. What was the prevailing logic? Did it work? Did it not work?
Yeah.
I don't think you can really use it going into other seasons because this is a very particular
unique
scenario.
Situation. Yeah.
But it'd be interesting to sort of consider.